Good evening, or good afternoon, I guess it's technically still. My name is Dr. Jan Meij. I'm an associate professor of sociology in the Department of Justice Studies, and I have the privilege of serving as the interim director for the Office of Public Policy Events. There we go. So we have a couple of agenda items. I'm going to give you a brief introduction of what this office is. I figured since we were doing these events, it might actually be a good idea to also let you know what we're about, give you a little recap of what we did this year. We're also going to get you to move around. So we're going to have a pre-test and a post-test interactive event, and there's going to be a lot of you moving around. Then we're going to have our panel, and at the end we're going to do the post-test, and we will enjoy some ice cream with that. So, the Florida legislature requires all the state universities to hold 4 events each year that bring people together from across ideological difference to talk about contentious issues. To me, this is kind of the core function of higher education, so I was thrilled to have that opportunity to make it into an office. Oh, wrong way. So this year, we had 3 prior events. The first one, we brought Dr. Nolan Hickton, an expert on media literacy, wrote a textbook on the importance of civil discourse. Why do we need to talk to people that we disagree with? In November, we followed that up by arguably one of the most contentious topics, our elections. And we heard from several people about the importance and ways that we can bridge differences about politics and religion. And then earlier this semester, we hosted the student body president debate. And today, I thought this would be a perfect topic to end our year with. So substance abuse, it has a lot of different issues ranging from, marijuana legalization, but also the opioid crisis, prescription drug abuse, violent gangs selling drugs, fentanyl. So I figured this would be a perfect topic to end the year with. So now is the time for you to move around. If you believe, try to pick one perspective more so than the other. Try not to all move in the middle, because that's not as interesting. If you believe that substance abuse is mostly a criminal justice issue, please move to the left of the room. If you believe that substance abuse is mostly a public health issue, please move to the right of the room. And while you're doing that, think about what makes you say that. And then after our panel, we're going to ask you the same question and to see like how many of you change your perspective, or perhaps you heard other ideas that made you change it, or maybe it stayed the same. So without further ado, please move to the left if you believe it's criminal justice. Please move to the right if you believe it's public health. And then
not your left.
Oh,
your right.
That's the other thing. I started overthinking this yesterday. I was.
In the middle.
Can I?
Ideally.
The majority.
What?
We've got an overwhelming amount of engagement on this side of the room. Does anyone want to volunteer and say why they picked this side? Raise your hand, I guess, if you want the mic. I'll pick you randomly if you don't choose. Perfect.
So I used to be on the left, obviously, with a criminal justice degree. But having worked with a substance abuse for several years, I moved more towards a public health issue. I think our criminal justice system has a major role in it because they've been forced to, not because it's where it should be.
Snaps. Does anyone else have anything to add? Why they chose this side? Jamie? You're like, please no. Kimmie, do you have anything you want to add?
Yes, I believe that it's a public health issue. And I think what it is people like me trying to recover and trying to get better and are sick. And the best place to be sick is on the outside, not on the inside. But also, too, there's time for that maybe. But for us who are out there using drugs and, getting in trouble and things like that, you wind up in jail, and then your sentence is almost a life sentence because then you're a felon and blah, 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 blah. Enough of that, but I'm on that side, most public health issue.
Is there anyone on the other side? There's only one. Sorry to put the spotlight on you.
Well, I had a tough choice to make. I said, could I be in the middle? But no, Jan said it had to be one or the other. So I came over here, but I've experienced both sides of it. And you have to start somewhere. So, I'm kind of in the middle, but I came over here. So maybe so.
Makes sense. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think
We'll just see how it goes.
yeah.
All right.
Please have a seat, and let's bring the panel up front. Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yikes. Are we blocking? I don't know. All right. Well, thank you for all of the panelists that made the time and the effort to join us for this event today and contribute from all of your various backgrounds. I just ask that you all introduce yourself. Make sure you speak into the mic. It will be recorded. So I guess just start from that side and introduce yourself and say how you kind of got involved with the topic or the issue of substance abuse and explain where you stand on the issue.
Sure. So yeah, I'm Dave Ondrako. I am a ER physician for Lee Health. So I work at 4 of the sites for Lee Health. So Gulf Coast, Lee Memorial, Coconut Point, and Health Park. And my training is obviously in emergency medicine, but I'm also the medical director for inpatient substance abuse for all of Lee Health. And because of the work that I do in the emergency department, it crosses over. We're one of the biggest. We see probably some of the most substance abuse patients in all of Lee Health, just through the emergency department, just by the nature of what we do. And so I've been working with Lee Health for the last 6 years. And about 4 years in my medical directorship position, bringing Lee Health up to speed and trying to improve some of the care that we have for our patients who present to our hospital with substance use disorder. So that's my primary and main role.
Awesome. Okay, next.
My name is Craig Kowalski. I'm the chief of Florida Gulf Coast University Police Department. My introduction into this was I'm not going to date myself, but over 30 years ago. So I've been doing this for over 30 years for criminal justice. So over the years, I mean, personally, I've seen substance abuse from family, friends, and then obviously from the criminal justice enforcement perspective, I've seen that too. So I'm 24 years roughly in the educational environment. So I worked at Broward Schools K through 12 for 20 plus years. So we've seen a lot of drug use in schools, you know, at the adolescent age, and, you know, a lot of treatment wraparound services. So I've been exposed to that most of my life. So at the end of the day, you know, as far as I'm going to answer the question probably a little bit early, it's both, right? So public health and there's an impact on criminal justice.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Heidi Webb, and I'm the CEO of Kimmie's Recovery Zone. It's a recovery community organization located in Page Park area of Fort Myers. I happen to be a person in long-term recovery. May, I will have 24 years in recovery.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I have worked in the field. I worked in substance use treatment. I have worked in the schools, teaching drug and alcohol prevention and life skills to children, middle and high school. And Al Kinkle is the founder of Kimmie's Recovery Zone. He and I had gotten together and with a few other people and built Kimmie's Recovery Zone, which has been amazing, and we'll get into that later. But and the other part of the question was briefly explain where I stand on the issue. So I lean more to a public health issue, mostly because it is a matter of a mental health. There's only usually about 6 to 8% of people that, you know, maybe they've experimented or they were just, you know, wanting to have so-called fun and became addicted to it. For the majority, it's a matter of mental health. For me personally, my brother had died, and that day an older kid offered me a substance, and I continued to use. I also am predisposed genetically, you know, for addictions. So there's a lot of factors in that, and you know, it's not a moral failing. And we need to extend compassion to people and help them to find treatment, you know, destigmatizing that. And as far as the criminology side, though, or the criminal side, I do have a background in law and justice. That is my bachelor's. And I worked in the legal profession for a long time prior. But where I stand with that is, you know, fentanyl is out there and it is a poison, and people are poisoning other people. So, and another aspect of it also is certain substances had been, it's a lesser of a crime. It went from a felony down to a misdemeanor. So there are people that are addicted to substances and they're no longer getting the treatment that they need because they're no longer, it's not I mean, it's a slippery slope to talk about it, but they're no longer, you know, being forced into treatment because they're not going to like the treatment courts because it's not a felony. So when it was a felony, more people were getting the help that they need.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jennifer Jacobi. I am the internship coordinator and an adjunct professor here in the Department of Justice Studies. Before this job, though, I was a police officer for 23 years and I retired, and some of those years was as an undercover narcotics detective. I would say that's probably where I got my start as a police officer, seeing substance use more than substance abuse. But during that time, I did do a stint in a little while in the schools as well as a high school resource officer. So I did see a lot of use and abuse with the younger kids when I did that. I also have family members who have both passed away from overdoses. So I have seen both sides as a civilian and as a sworn officer. And my stance on it is, I would say when I first started off, my stance was more, it's a criminal justice issue because that was my job and that's what I did. I arrested people, I dealt drugs, I bought drugs, I pretended to use drugs. And now that I'm older and wiser and have these family members that have passed away, I've kind of shifted a little bit more towards it is a public health issue. But I can see both sides and I can argue either one. So I think it is both as well. Is that most?
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here tonight and the whole panel here. It's nice to meet everybody. My name's Al Kinkle, and I'm the founder of Kimmie's Recovery Zone. And we also have Kimmie's Angels, which is part of Lee Health. It's on the 5th floor, and it's for kids with cancer. So that was the first fund we started here in Southwest Florida. And then we also had a fund, in fact, we gave scholarships out here the early days for women in sobriety. So then we also had Women Empowering Women, and that was the same project that we had. Women Empowering Women were women in sobriety, so that was in Palm Beach. But like Heidi said, and thank God I met Heidi, she's very, very good, excellent, helping out this community. But my daughter had passed away after a 20-year mental health and substance use issue. And Kimmie tried very hard, but that's why when we talk about it, we talk about, is it a mental health? Is it something other than that? And I think in my little mind, I think that's where it starts in most cases, not all cases, but something happened, some trauma or something, and that got the person on a track, a different track. And when we start out, it's all fun and you're something that you might have a little enjoyment for that time. But when Kimmie started, by the time she was 13, she was fully blown for opioids. And then she continued on that journey of using, and she was in recovery several times, went into recovery again, and came out and was coming home. And the night before she came home, she used, and in there she was poisoned with fentanyl. And that's what we say today, and that's the other side. So if somebody's out there selling drugs today and they know fentanyl is in there, they know that they're going to murder somebody. And 70%, I work very closely with the Sheriff's Department and anybody, in particular the Sheriff's Department here, and it's 70 to 80%. Every drug that's found today, even the pot, it's laced with fentanyl. So that's where I stand. But I think we need more services and insurance. That would solve a lot of problems.
Thank you, Al.
Hi, good evening. My name is Charlie Blackburn. I'm a special agent with the FBI assigned to Fort Myers here. I guess I was exposed to the substance abuse issue back 20 whatever years ago when I was a police officer and witnessed firsthand the effects that the issue causes to that person, but also was able to see the indirect effects of the crimes that are committed because of that person's addiction, whether it be domestic violence, robberies, thefts, burglaries, car break-ins, that kind of thing. I went into the FBI 17 years ago. My first office was in South Dakota, and I was assigned to work violent crime on an Indian reservation. And that particular reservation, it's the poorest county, or kind of teeters on like top 3 poorest counties in the country, but it also has an alcoholism rate of about 85%. So it begs the question in my mind, yes, obviously there's a huge genetic factor with this issue, but over there at least, I guess it also is a socioeconomic or learned behavior type issue. Just interesting observation, I suppose, I made. And then now, and in the year since, I've kind of see it from the transnational criminal organization investigation piece to it, where there's obviously huge demand for substances. That demand fuels the greed by the cartels and the violence that's associated with that. So because of those two things, I think it's more of a or it's both a public health and criminal justice issue.
Yeah. Thank you all. I'm so sorry for many of your losses relating specifically to this issue. I want to kind of introduce myself. I realize I kind of forgot to do that. But I am Rayna Smith. I'm your moderator today for the panel. I'm also the student representative for the Office of Public Policy Events, which is who is hosting this event. I'm also the founder and president of Just Ask Without Shame. It's a campus nonprofit initiative and a student group that brings on and off campus recovery resources to FGCU students' attention. And I'm really excited to be hosting this panel. So thank you all for coming. The next question is, how common is substance abuse, and are there particular demographics that are more prone to it? I guess we can start on one end like we did before, but yeah.
Sure. So it's really common. So about 10% of the population, actually it's 10 to 20% at some point in your life, will suffer from some sort of substance use disorder. So it is extremely common to see. And so I did 5 years in Baltimore before coming down here. I was an ER doctor up in Baltimore. And I'll tell you that the opioid epidemic in and around Baltimore is crazy compared to down here. I mean, we're talking 10 to 20 times worse than it is down here. So there's some variation across the country about what you're going to see in the patients, or for me, they're patients, for people who have the substance use disorder. Up there was a lot of young people, right? So you're talking young people who are using IV opioids. Back then it was heroin. Now it's obviously much more fentanyl, and almost all predominantly fentanyl, and almost no heroin. So it has shifted. Down here, it's interesting. So when you look at the demographics of Southwest Florida, there is a population of people with opioid use disorder, for sure. We see it. Our major problem in this area is alcohol. If you look at our patient population, you look at the patients that I see in the emergency department, I worked all day today up in the ER Gulf Coast. If you look at those patients, the amount of trauma, slips and falls, motor vehicle accidents that are related to alcohol, and then also just how about the medical problems, right? So the liver disease, the chronic medical conditions is much bigger in my mind than the opioid epidemic down here. And I'm not diminishing the opioid epidemic, because it is here. But our greatest struggler is alcohol. And that's our biggest problem in my mind down here in this area. But again, it's across the nation. It varies. But our population, they struggle with alcohol use disorder the most. So that's what I see.
I'm gonna go with what the doctor says. He sees it, but I mean, when you look at, I mean, I'm responsible for FGCU campuses, so what he is saying is aligning with our data, because we have the annual security reporting. It's online, you can see it. There are more alcohol referrals for some type of action than drug referrals. Sure. So, I mean, we luckily on this campus and throughout all our campuses, we don't have a high number. But again, just some is too many. But at the end of the day, it supports what he's saying. Yes.
Okay. So how common is substance use, and particular demographics that are prone to it? You know, there are, I mean, the statistics that we get, it says that ages 18 to 45, it's the leading cause of death in America. That's above heart attacks and other matters like that. Ages 18 to 25 are the highest at risk of developing a substance use disorder. And the demographics, you know, it doesn't discriminate. So it is everywhere. And, you know, but you'll find like a higher population with those that have experienced trauma, socioeconomic backgrounds, depending on the status, you know, and environment is a big thing as well. You know, education. Different things like that. So.
I don't know how common it is. I don't really see it anymore in my line of work. I do just want to point out, though, before I forget, that there is a difference between substance use and substance abuse, and substance abuse is not used anymore. It's substance use disorder. So thank you for making that correction, for you guys for saying that. So I feel like in my life, I've dealt more with substance use than substance use disorder, except for my family members who have died from substance use disorder. So I can't answer that second question about how common it is because I don't know. These professionals know way better than I do.
I think today, anyway, the way we look at it, we've said it a few times before in different interviews that we had, but we're almost like in a war. So the demographics, generally, it would be the inner city population where I'm from, inner city. And I was drinking at the age of 10, smoking cigarettes, drinking beer, and then it led on to almost a lifelong journey for me. But I think today it doesn't have any particular neighborhood anymore. It's in everybody's neighborhood. And I believe with the alcohol being the worst of all, because that's where it all starts. So if you're and when I grew up, and even today, almost every household has alcohol in it. Well, if you look at Facebook, and I look at it now every single day, and I look and I see all these people, everybody's got a drink, everybody. So it's like, wow, that's great. So who's looking at it? Our kids are. So it just passes down. But inner city, it might be a little rougher and get a little harder, and maybe a little more deaths are caused, where maybe the more affluent areas, it might be a little different. But everybody today, it's in every household. Those doors, they go right through those doors and into your house and take your children and your mother and father and your aunt and uncle away from you. That's what drugs are doing today.
Thank you.
I agree. Drugs, alcohol, it has no bounds. It can affect anyone. No one is immune to it. From my line of work, yes, alcohol is the big one for whatever reasons. But as far as the illicit drug substances go, we see the most of methamphetamines and fentanyl. Anecdotally, I guess in my observations in the last 8 years here, fentanyl may be a little bit on the decline, but that doesn't mean it's still not a problem. I can think of, in the last couple of weeks, I can think of 8 or 10 kilograms of fentanyl that were seized just in our area. And I'm terrible at math, but if you do the math, 1 kilo is 1,000 grams, so that's 8,000 to 10,000 grams. I think one dosage unit of fentanyl is I think that equals hundreds of thousands of dosage units of fentanyl. So it's a huge problem. Methamphetamine, the prices have gone down to a tenth of what they were 10 years ago. So it's easy access. It's super cheap. And because of that, it's an issue. And it's a major issue that we're seeing a lot of in our casework here in Southwest Florida.
Absolutely. What is something that you wish the general public knew about this topic with a particular eye that you've been granted because of your role?
It's a good question. I would say I wish that people knew that somebody with a substance use disorder has a true medical disease. That we can, and this has changed. This is better now than it was 20 years ago. We used to look at people who have this disease as someone who was bad, right? That they couldn't stop using because they couldn't make the right choice. If they could only be good enough to make the right choice and just stop and be a good person, right? That's how we used to look at it. We know more about it today than we did back then. And we know that it's truly a medical disease. And that I wish that we as a society would identify those people and really treat them as if they had a disease, which is how we treat cancer, right? You wouldn't look at somebody with cancer and say, damn, I really wish you could just get over it. Right. I really wish you could just stop and go home and just get over it and do better, right? We don't do that with cancer. Same kind of thing with high blood pressure, right? Somebody with high blood pressure goes to the doctor, they get put on pills. Great. 3 months later, they go back to the doctor. They're still not better. Their blood pressure is still high. We don't look at that patient and go, wow, you suck. right? We don't treat them like that. We say, okay, you need more treatment. You need better help. We need to change some of your medications. So that's the change that I see happening. It is happening. It's even happening. So we're not immune to that. The medical community is also responsible for some of that stigma. And I see that, and I'm a force of change for that within our community here at Lee Health. But people like me have to keep speaking out. And so that we do truly understand that this is a disease and that it is treatable. That's the other part. This is a treatable disease. With the right treatment, people do get better. It's just getting that right treatment out there for them and having access to that treatment. So that's my wish. And truly my goal is to make people understand that this truly is a medical disease.
He says it right all the time.
On that guy.
No, that guy, no, but I mean, so, and again, different perspectives, right? So, and different responsibilities. He sees our local environment, he sees the patients coming in. Here, you know, the biggest thing that FGCU offers resources and just community at whole, right? Needs to be able to offer the resources. When I'm listening, we're talking about like fentanyl, marijuana, alcohol, and you got prescription medication. You know, those are different things that you could abuse, right? So just those resources to say, hey, I need some help to maintain, to figure out what's going on, you know, the wraparound services I talked about. Mental health is a big thing. I mean, think about when somebody comes from high school to college, what's there? You know, their parents aren't there, but, you know, at the end of the day, you have freedom. So you start experimenting with things. You talk about that 6 to 8% of experimentation, you know. So here at FGCU, we have the health and wellness, you know, prevention and wellness services. They offer different prevention programs that they can get involved with and just get that education piece out. So that's what I would like to get out there. There's that education piece out here, at least at the college and university. And we're not the only one. Everybody does it. You have resources in the community at the same time.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it was all great stuff, both from the chief and Dr. Ondrako. You know, and recovery is about rebuilding lives. You know, a lot of people think, well, they're using drugs, they need to stop. You know, and there is the disease of addiction. You know, it is a physical or mental health matter. Depends on, you know, what is, you know, whether it's based in trauma or, you know, and then once somebody's using, they have the physical addiction, it changes the pathways in the brain. So, and with all those wraparound services, you know, because it is, you know, employment, it is relationships with others. There's a lot of different factors that are in play. Housing, if somebody is not properly housed, you know, what is their situation like, you know? And it goes to that with, is it a criminal matter or is it a public health matter? You know, because like, where do these people end up? I say these people, you know, people like me. But where do people end up when they're, you know, it's treated as a moral deficiency. It's treated as a crime, you know, and then, you know, they do end up on the streets. They do end up in jail, things like that. So we do need to wrap around it and understand that this is a medical matter. It's a public health issue. And how can we help the person? And we need to treat the whole person to wrap around them.
Yeah.
In my world, I wish people would know that substance use, not even substance use disorder, but substance use will keep you from a career in law enforcement. And I don't know how many students I have to say, if you're smoking marijuana, stop. Even though it's legal in some states, it's still illegal in the federal system. And that's a different topic for a different day. But until they change the marijuana laws in the federal system, it's still illegal. And you cannot get a job in law enforcement if you use marijuana too many times, depending what agency you're trying to get hired with. And so that's what I wish the general public would understand, that even though it is legal some places, not in the federal government, and you will not be able to get a job if you continue to use it. So that's in my world.
I'll still Dr. Ondrako's too, so. But at any rate, yeah, I think I'd like people to know that people like us that have these issues going on in our lives, it all started somewhere. And I think if people knew that recovery is possible, we have 20-some million people that are in recovery, actively being very successful. I wish people could see that. I wish we could televise that and talk about that more, about their successes. There's doctors and lawyers and Indian chiefs that are in recovery, and I'm so proud of our organizations, and I'm proud of them, what they've done. Heidi, myself, and whoever else is sitting in this room that's in recovery, God bless you. You know, you've done something really big, and look what you've become. And that's what I'd like people to know. The stigma behind it all is death-defying. But today, when I talk to a lot of people, a lot of parents today, I never had heard this before Kimmie passed 10 years ago. I didn't really hear it that much, once in a while. But now everybody that I touch, everybody that I talk to has an experience where they lost his son. I mean, I'm looking at them, I'm going, oh, man, I thought I had it bad. They lost a kid too. Some lost 2 kids. So, you know, I wish people would see that. And then I had Kimmie's diary out the other day. I was telling Heidi about it today. And I saw pages I never saw before. And I wish people would understand that. And, you know, when you get a look into somebody's mind from a journal, it's really helpful for you to understand and not hate them for being sick. They're sick and they're trying to get better and they're doing everything that they can, but you can't make them sick by, you know, doing mean things to them. And that's what happens. So anyway, that's what I think. My good friend.
You. Yes, well, I agree with the doctor as well. Removing that stigma is huge. And I suppose I was guilty of it too in my younger years, but the older you get, you realize it's a disease and not a choice, and the person can't just simply do better. But specifically from a law enforcement perspective, something I wish the general public would have a better understanding is when we bring charges against somebody, especially at the federal level, it takes time, a long time, and it takes a lot of evidence that we need to collect to prove that whoever we're accusing of a crime did it without beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not done with the snap of a finger, like we wish it was, and like the people affected by wish it was. Perfect example is there's a lot of task forces around the country that focuses on fentanyl overdose cases and charging the supplier for the death that resulted from that. But those cases are incredibly, incredibly tough to make. Oftentimes the victim used the drugs and there's no other witnesses. So how do you prove that the drugs that he was just supplied with earlier in the day weren't, you know, he used those, but then someone else resupplied him with more drugs and it wasn't those drugs that killed him. So I guess what I wish is just, it's tough to put together a solid case on these kind of investigations. It's not done overnight.
What do you consider to be the biggest causes of substance use disorder?
So from my perspective, you know, as a doctor, to me, the biggest cause is genetics. There are some great studies out there where there were twin studies, right? So you'd take two people and the twins would be separated at birth, and you'd raise them in completely different environments. And there was a lot of those studies, and it shows that, you know, because they have the same genetic material, they both have the same propensity to develop whatever substance use disorder their parents had. And they're really strong studies and they're really well linked. So for me, there's a very strong genetic component that goes into developing, but it also is other things, right? So it's also environment, trauma, stress. There's a lot of other things that go into it, and then access, right? So where you grow up and what you have access to really develops into, and it's, to be honest, it's a combination of all of it, right? So all of those pieces together, the wrong pieces together, you will end up developing a substance use disorder. And that's what we know about the cause.
He's the science guy, so so when he talks about environmental factors, that's what I had written down. You know, like it could, and I think it's relative to age, right? So when I say that, I mean, when you get older, you have different stressors, and you could get into different things. I mean, when you're younger, you may start off with experimentation and the access, right? So that's a big key. I want to add to the last question really quick. So my law enforcement people, we're talking about like, you know, the arrest and the cases, but from my previous employment, I was responsible for background screening of all employees coming into the district. So you'd see a lot of like juvenile arrests, and then even an arrest at like 18, 19 for minor offenses. But then once in a while you see felonies and things like that, felony drugs. Well, you cannot get into government employment with certain offenses. So there's screening requirements. So you used to have to sit down with them. Well, I can't pass you through the screening process. Well, this happened 30 years ago, right? Well, unfortunately, the state legislatures didn't think about you when they wrote the laws. And times change, right? So that's a big thing too, that people just need to understand their actions that get them tied up with the criminal justice system have an impact way down the, you know, later, because you never know what you're going to grow up and do, right? So I never thought I'd be doing this for 30 plus years, but I am. So, but I just wanted to add that to the last one.
So I would agree again with the doctor and the chief, you know, and they both mentioned access, and I would point out also the lack of access, like the lack of access to healthcare, you know, types of treatment, even just like counseling, lack of education, lack of understanding about the disease of addiction. And this is what the need is, to link this child or young adult that's progressing in this condition, you know, to these services because maybe of socioeconomic status, you know, different things like that. So it just progresses.
Yeah. I think one of the causes, I don't know how big it is the whole sensationalization. Is that the word? Sensationalization of the coolness of, ooh, let's drink underage, let's smoke weed underage, sets up these younger kids for, oh, I'm breaking the law, I'm so cool. And if we could get rid of these musicians and celebrities who openly speak about making scissor and shooting up, you know, in the 80s, the hair bands shot up heroin and, you know, they didn't die. If we could get more younger kids to watch documentaries of what it's really like to have substance use disorder and the bad parts that the doctor sees every day, all day long. And I think that would help a lot. So I think another cause is just like media in general sensationalizes it when it shouldn't be sensationalized.
Yes, I think information, lack of information, getting to the right people in the right areas. You know, FGCU is well known for them out there being on the cutting edge of things like what we're doing here tonight. I mean, that's a big deal. So I think that the more we can do that, the more information we can get out there, the better off we are, because we're all in some kind of an environment. And if you're in an environment and you're not educated to some of those things that might happen through the use of drugs, you're liable to fall for that. I think it wasn't too far. There was a bunch of college kids, not, I forget the name of it, was that the girl passed away. She had a drink and she passed away. About drinking, it goes in, even into that. She was a college-age girl, and the guy that owned the club that it happened at came to us the next day, and he wanted Narcan. So we gave him Narcan, but the girl passed away. The two girls, it was just recently, probably 6 months ago. I don't know if you remember that, Heidi. But so I think just education and your environment, be careful of your environment, and you know, or peer peer people, your peers are pushing it all the time. So I think that's the things that I like to see more of.
Yeah, I agree. Mental health, genetics, depression, anxiety, PTSD, all the above are probably the biggest culprits of what causes substance use disorder. I suppose what perpetuates it or what prevents it from being cured is the lack of funding, lack of awareness, and that stigma that's been mentioned earlier. That was a good point about sensationalism. I have a high school daughter. She's 15. And she says at her school, she's in the way minority. Like everyone uses marijuana except for her. And I'm no doctor, but I know that at that age, marijuana is probably one of the things you shouldn't be using when the brain's still developing. And it's going to create all kind of issues down the road for these kids that are doing it every single day. Skipping class, going to get high in the bathrooms with the vape pens or whatever they call them. That's a good point about the sensationalism.
Yeah. How unique is Southwest Florida in the way that it is specifically dealing with substance use disorder compared to Florida or the federal government? And what do you think is behind this uniqueness?
So, like I said, I have experience outside of Southwest Florida, training up in Pittsburgh and then Baltimore. Southwest Florida is interesting. In Florida in general is an interesting place to treat people. It is, I think, the last time I checked, the 48th state for access to mental health resources. So we're almost dead last. And I'll tell you, the difference is profound. From in Baltimore, the access that I had for my patients was great. I could get somebody into treatment the very next day for free at the health department. I could start them on medication and get them into an intensive outpatient program for free at the health department. So that's one thing that we are really lacking down here in Florida in general, is resources and treatment. I would say one unique thing about Southwest Florida is our police departments are doing a really good job in enforcing the laws and in protecting our people. So that is something that is probably done better down here than is in some other states. The link that's missing is the cooperation between healthcare and in police and then jails. So in Maryland, there was a program for people who were incarcerated for primary substance use disorder. So to say they had a small amount of drugs on them or some other offense and they get jailed, they would start treatment right in jail. And that's really what people need. So I would love to see that cooperation start to merge down here. Where we start, because it's really an opportunity, right? So if that patient or that person, it's a patient to me, but it's a person to our law enforcement, that opportunity that they have when they're in jail, when they're sitting in a jail cell, is powerful, because they're sitting there, now they're sobering up. It is a perfect opportunity to introduce some help to that person, because that next day could be the next day of the rest of their life. If we can start treatment, right? Certainly they're going to have the consequences of their actions. I'm not saying that you shouldn't face those consequences. Absolutely. But we should start helping them while they're incarcerated, whether medication, therapy, counseling. I would love to see that coupling start to happen down here in Florida.
Great points. So, but it makes you think, right? So, okay, as a law enforcement officer, if you make an arrest, what happens to the person, they get out, right? Then what, right? So if it's their first arrest, okay, but if you have somebody that's been arrested multiple times, like you're saying, there probably isn't a lot of services. At the end of the day, like I said, my career has been in educational institutions, right? So school systems, university systems have those resources you can have access to. But the general public, and you used to work with Miramar, so I know her from there, but I don't know what they have, and you have some municipalities that have like pretrial intervention programs, things like that, but that's to get them out of the criminal justice system. I don't think there's much to do that treatment at some point. So it's more me, I'm having more of a conversation out there. Here I know what we have to offer, and I mentioned some of the things there, but I agree, that's probably the perfect time to go in and say, hey, what resources can I give to you?
So we come from a recovery-based for sustainability. The Kimmie's Recovery Zone is a recovery community organization. Our business is recovery. People, I know like with Southwest Florida, we've experienced some serious hurricanes recently. And I mean, COVID was an issue where there was a lot of people, like the numbers increased of substance use, including alcohol. Like I knew a person in long time recovery through, having a alcohol addiction. And long time, like 30 some years, and that person experienced some traumatic event in his home and ended up picking up alcohol again. There are people that I know that were in recovery that had passed away because they went back to using because COVID isolated them. And there were no more meetings in person. They didn't have the connection that was needed. Al and I have built a place where people can come and connect, because once people come out of detox or treatment or even jail, then what, right? So we're here for the long-term sustainability. There's no discharge plan, right? So what we are working toward is building that community-based, recovery services and linking in to for the wraparound services with all the other organizations. We call it continuum of care. We can call it ROSC, recovery oriented system of care. But we are consistently making the effort to move forward with that.
Do you guys work with the drug courts?
Yes.
Here? Sure.
Yes, we go into veteran, mental health, and drug court.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I don't really know that much about Southwest Florida because I'm from Southeast Florida. I know what we did there. Broward County did have the first drug court in the state of Florida, but officers didn't even know about it. It was my job to teach officers about the Baker Act, the Marchman Act, and that there is such a thing as drug court and Veterans Court. And if they don't put, at least over there, I don't know how it is here, but over on that side, if they didn't put in their arrest affidavit, this person is a veteran and is requesting veteran services, or this person is requesting drug court and would like services for that, they were lost in the system. It wasn't even a screening tool in the jail. So we were working in Broward to try to fix that. And I know there is a drug court here, but I do not know how it works here. But one thing I do want to say just on the subject is law enforcement is so behind, not just in Florida, but just law enforcement in general, investigations, just the criminals are just so, and this doesn't even matter for substance use disorder. This is for every crime. We're a reactionary tool to try to get ahead. And this is just another facet in that, is that I don't even know what I'm saying at this point, but we're so far behind the times. And it's stuff like this that will help us get better at our jobs, and the communication and the collaboration, which 10 years ago didn't exist as far as I know. I don't know. I mean, 10 years ago, we would never even be having a conversation with mental health professionals and medical professionals and this kind of thing. So I think we're moving in the right direction, but we're still behind. That's great.
Yeah, that's one thing what you just said. We are a little bit behind, but I think what it is, it happened, especially here in Southwest Florida, with COVID, and then we had 3 hurricanes, and I think that's slowed us down a little bit. But the uniqueness of us is the fact that we face our problems, and we're trying to fix them. We're working together with all the agencies. I mean, what we go through with the other agencies and what they go through and put up with Heidi, me, and our whole group is amazing. We just before we came in, we got somebody into treatment that's been hanging out in our office for 2 weeks trying to find a place for him to go, and because of his record. And that's the other thing that has to be put out there and known, if you get a charge against you, especially a felony, that could last a lifetime. So people don't realize that, and then we have to get those words out. So again, unique we are here because we're a great community that really are looking for the answers. And again, I'll just repeat myself, this is a good ground for it right here, what we're doing tonight, is find our answers, and we can't do it by ourselves. We need everybody to help us. I certainly found out 80 years ago that I didn't have all the answers.
I guess our role, or the FBI, our federal law enforcement role in attacking this problem is kind of on par in Southwest Florida, is similar and pretty much the same throughout the country that I've experienced. We partner with our local law enforcement agencies. Here in Southwest Florida, I'm one of 2 agents assigned to work violent crime and safe streets, which basically means drug investigations. And then we have Lee County Sheriff's Office, Cape Coral PD, sometimes Collier County, if they're on our task force, FDLE. So we all work as a group to attack the problem as a whole. Sometimes the best solution may be for let the state handle the problem at that level, or if it's take the case to the federal level for prosecution. And that's kind of done the same in South Carolina when I was a police officer, South Dakota, Los Angeles, San Juan. And that, I think that's probably the best way to, from a investigative attack the supply chain point of view. That's probably the best plan that I've seen. It works, but we need about 10 times the amount of people addressing the issue, and that's a whole different topic of conversation. So I think we're in Southwest Florida, we're pretty much doing what other areas of the country are doing.
Yeah. So why?
May I answer that?
Of course.
So just coming from both sides, from the East Coast and then now on the West Coast, what I see as a challenge for law enforcement is prosecution, right? So there are some rules with prosecutors. So we can make the arrest, but they may not prosecute it. So then they get out, and what do? What then, right? So they may drop the charges, but they've been through that whole trauma experience of getting arrested, using whatever they're using. They got caught with it. And again, now what, right? So, and that could just add to the stress and could add to the problem and could lead to other things. But what I do notice, and at least in Broward and on this side, there are certain criteria that law enforcement has to meet with the prosecutors for them to actually charge the offense. So it's becoming more normalized as far as use, because the arrests aren't happening as much.
Does anyone else want to add anything to that question?
No, I would agree. In my experience, at the state level, they have the same issue as the law enforcement officers. They need, need additional manpower. You can only do so much. There's only 24 hours in a day, and they may triage and prioritize certain cases over others. And unfortunately, some of those cases that are righteous cases go by the wayside.
I guess the next question would be, what do each of you think would be the ideal solution to handling substance use? And why do you think Florida is in dead last for treatment?
So for me, it's treatment. The best treatment for someone with the best, way to get somebody better is high quality treatment. The problem with, if you have cancer, right? If you show up to the hospital and you have cancer, I can get you treatment. You're going to be admitted to the hospital. We're going to work on you. We're going to do all the diagnostics. You name the test, we're going to do it. And we're going to get you the right treatment, right? The problem with substance use disorders, you come into the hospital and you don't have insurance. You're at the end of the rope. You're homeless. You're helpless. And we don't have the resources for you. What we do is we say, here's your pamphlet. Good luck. It's not the same. So what we really need to do is invest in high quality treatment for people, because I will tell you, treatment works. We look at the data. People might say, oh, I went to rehab 9 times, right? And people will say, oh, well, treatment doesn't work. it does work. And sometimes treating the person with high blood pressure takes 9 times going to the doctor to get that blood pressure under control. It doesn't mean that that's treatment failure. It just takes 9 times sometimes. Sometimes it only takes once. But we need to have access to that high quality treatment to get people better. And that's, in my opinion, the biggest barrier that we have, because we just don't have those options down here. What people really need, so we have some detox, we have some things, but what people really need is a prolonged treatment stay. And that's how you get better. That's what the data shows. We just don't have access to it down here yet. I hope it's coming, but we just don't have access to it yet.
Yeah, I agree with the doctor. I mean, treatment, that's what I've written down, is treatment, right? So, but then that sustained ability to keep it going, right? That recovery effort that you talked about. Money from somewhere. I don't know where it's going to come from, federal government, but, federal government, state, local government, you got to fund some of this stuff because people don't have insurance. So where does that money come from? I have no idea. But the treatment is definitely a key, but that sustained access to it, that's my.
Yeah, I again agree. I had done some research about, beds that are available for treatment. We talked about this being primarily the underlying cause of mental health condition, and in the 50s, there were something like 500,000 beds available to treat people. It was federally funded. This is across America. And now there's only like 20 to 25,000 beds that are available, and most of them are for forensic matters, right? So, we do send people to Lee Health that may have some underlying medical conditions. They also need to be detoxed and, but then where do they go from there? And, we do set people up with treatment and, but it is sometimes it's difficult depending on if they have money, if they have insurance, things like that. I'm not sure if I actually answered the question. Okay, thanks.
I feel like the best way to do it is to reduce the stigma, because there's people who are substance abuse disorder that don't even tell their medical doctor what's going on, and how can they get the help that they need when they don't even feel comfortable because there's that stigma attached. And the second part of that is we need to get them when they're young, before they even start. If we can use preventative measures by showing them this is what happens to you if you do this, and basically scare them into not doing this, I think that's a good way to go. So in the schools, in elementary school, if we reduce the stigma of saying, don't tell anyone this is bad, that gets away the sensationalization and also allows them to open up and ask for help, like your organization does here. Don't be afraid to ask. If we get them when they're young, if they say, oh, my mom and my dad, they drink all day long when I get home from school. If we know that in the beginning, then we can help them. They're already probably genetically predisposed to that. And we can give them the preventative measures. And I feel like that's probably the best way to do it. It's unrealistic, I know, but in an ideal world, that would be how to handle it.
I disagree with you. It is realistic, and I'm on your team because that's what I believe. I believe the more information we can get them, and again, Heidi and I talk about it. We got Kimmie's kids over there, and it's making a nice little difference, and we hope to expand that. But if we start it in school, addiction is not just today in 2025. Addiction's been around for many, many years. I've been through all the war on drugs and all this, and then boom, 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 boom. Until we really decide we are at some type of a war and start getting our children, with the information as young kids so that they know, and even what's going on in the home, and this is a big policymaker deal. This really has to come from above first, and then to the policymakers, and then to us, because we really have to decide that we have to spend a lot of money. And when Carmine, the sheriff here, and I met, we put
well, he did it, not me, but they interviewed me in there. We put 24 beds in the jail. We work with the sheriff all the time. We work with the courts all the time. So we're doing all the things that I think are kind of unique, but the court system does work. That is really, it's really working, bringing people through, and then they don't get charged at the end of the day. But all that being said, we really got to get serious. This is big. This is the death of a nation. And I'm saddened when I think about it, because probably everybody in this room is affected by it. And the stigma behind it is when Kimmie went into emergency room and she overdosed, and that's all part of it. Relapse and overdose is all part of it. But when she overdosed in the hospital, they said, well, we don't have time to take care of her. We got patients. So that, and we trained 900 nurses at Lee Health a couple of years ago to recognize people that came in with mental health and substance use and how to treat them a little bit differently. Now, with Dr. Ondrako they're on a big move to get that all out there. So we are trying our best, but really until we realize that this is very serious. Oh, God, darn it. He's going to fire me.
Yeah, I agree. It's funding twofold. One, for therapy. Obviously, treatment and therapy is tremendously needed. Maybe also some funding for research and development on different medicines. I just read recently these GLP-1 medicines people take for weight loss also help with substance abuse addictions. Maybe some more research development can be thrown into that, and the FDA can approve a new drug that treats it. I don't know. It's, to me, maybe I'm biased from my perspective of things, but the war on drugs, it's often said it's lost, we lost. Maybe too much emphasis was placed on the supply side with the, plays well on TV, it's sexy for movies with people, commandos fast roping down from helicopters in Colombia and SWAT teams kicking in doors. But maybe that focus needs to shift towards the demand side and really start focusing on a more nuanced approach to treating the demand. And that might just solve the whole issue. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. This is going to be kind of our last and final question of the panel. What initiatives, programs, and other recovery resources have you seen that would be most effective in addressing substance use? And where do you see the future of substance abuse treatment and prevention going?
It's a great question. I got to say, this is a great start, right? So getting all of these professionals together to have the discussion. And we're sitting here talking about a topic that no one wants to talk about.
Yeah.
We're talking about substance abuse in our community. It is like this 4-letter word that no one wants to have a discussion about. And we're all up here having the discussion. And I think that's a fantastic start. The disease of addiction really is, for those who have it, it is a lonesome, terrible disease. People suffer by themselves because we're not out there talking about it. When I think about going to Publix and you hit the thing and they're like, oh, do you want to donate $1 to the children's hospital? Everyone's like, yes, I do. Why don't we have that where it says, hey, do you want to donate $1 to people with substance use disorder in Lee County? We don't do it because of the stigma around it, right? And this is how you reduce the stigma, is we get out, we talk about it, we have professional conversations about it. And this is a great step. So for me, being a part of this, panel has been amazing, and having the ability to talk about it really is a step forward.
Keep educating, right? Same thing, again, I'm talking for FGCU, like my officers, they're available to go up and talk to. My officers here are a resource, so I look at them like that. So at the end of the day, we're not the bad guys, right? So we're here to help. That's part of my officer's role, is to get the students through their college experience without any issues, right? So, but if they have issues, they should be able to come up and speak to an officer. So I'm going to go back to my Broward days, or even my City of Parkland days when I was a school resource officer. You gotta introduce that police role early on as a resource, not just an enforcer. So I'm representing my department within this community. But I think throughout every community, you should see police officers, especially in the schools, because we talk about getting them young, right? We got away from the DARE program and those other intervention programs in the schools because of the violence on schools, right? We took the resource out of school resource officer, and what happened is it became a gun on campus. We got to get back to that. So it's that education piece. So here, again, on our campuses, my officers are a resource. We have, prevention and wellness offers programs. So just take advantage of those things. But again, Kimmie's, that's a resource to, the community resources. Funding would be great for all these things to continuously have them, but we got to figure out how to tap into them. That pressing that $1 donation would be a start.
Yeah, we'll take those donations. Because we offer free programs. We are federally funded. We do, I really want to point out that the education is key. Our job as an RCO, Recovery Community Organization, is to educate, to raise awareness, and to reduce stigma. And not only about substance use disorder, mental health, but also about harm reduction, about Narcan. We have been working diligently to spread Narcan out, to blanket everywhere with Narcan. We have taken the EMS heat map to show us where the high density of overdoses are. We have recovery peer specialists that we have placed in these locations to spread out Narcan, to give out our literature, to raise that awareness, because we currently have a problem and we have to save lives. So if Narcan is not on hand, then what, right? Because the Narcan is now available over the counter. It's no longer a prescribed medication. It's available over the counter. There's no reason why Narcan shouldn't be in every location. Al and I worked really hard to finally get Narcan throughout the entire Lee County school system. I believe there's 120 schools that now have Narcan. Al and I went and met with the school board, the health department, and we delivered Narcan. Every school has it now, and they have their internal policies with it, But people are overdosing. It is a real issue, and Narcan is a real solution, to have that on hand. To continue to educate and have the recovery programs, like maybe having dedicated housing on campus that's solely recovery based, people that are in recovery, having recovery socials. It's important because people feel like, you talked about social sensationalizing, and it's the cool thing. Well, recovery is cool. It really is. I'm cool, right? Yeah, sure. For to be in long-term recovery, right? It's attractive. I saw other people doing it. And I was like, wow, they can do it. I can do it, So this is what led me on that path and helped to sustain me by having those relationships, building that social network, because we are social beings, right? So we've developed Kimmie's, it's called the Social Zone at Kimmie's Recovery Zone, where we have those kind of events. And that should be on campus as well.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for what you do with Just Ask Without Shame.
Thank you, Heidi. Mm-hmm. I agree that even though Narcan can kind of be a short-term Band-Aid fix, it saves that person's life and it reverses the effects of that overdose and allows them to later explore treatment and take advantage of those resources as well.
Where there's breath, there's opportunity.
Amen.
I want to piggyback off the chief. People need to know that being under the influence, as long as you're not driving, is not a crime. So if you need help, you can go to a police officer. If you are in the middle of an overdose, if you took a bad acid trip and you're freaking out, if you are so high you don't know what to do with yourself, you can approach somebody in uniform and ask for help, and they're not going to take you to jail as long as you don't have physically possession of the drug on you and it's just in your body. It's not a crime for it to have already been in your body unless you are driving or boating. Okay, just blanket statement there. Do not drive and do not operate a boat. So I'd like to get rid of that stigma as well, is that we're not only here to arrest you, we are here to help you. And I say we because I'll always be a police officer, even though I'm retired. But I wish more people knew that as well, is that if you need help, they will help you. They're not necessarily going to take you to jail just because you did drugs and now you're freaking out. And so I know that other colleges have the program where if somebody has alcohol poisoning, you are immune if you call 911 and ask for help. If your fraternity brother is passed out drunk and needs medical assistance, you're not going to get in trouble if you call 911. I do not know if FGCU has that same policy.
It's medical amnesty here.
Perfect. So that needs to be put out there too for these kids who don't listen to us and they're still going to do what they're going to do. They need to know that they do have options and they're not going to get in trouble if they do the right thing.
Okay, well, I think what I think we really need to do again is work together through the process. And you mentioned working, with the police. I mean, we have such a tight relationship these days. Back in the day, you didn't used to have those relationships. It was like, but we've had a very strong relationship with the sheriff, and the Fort Myers sheriff, both, and the mayor and the whole community. So we're right to do something really, really different, and really, really big, and it's just to try to get with great people on the board of directors. Dr. Ondrako is one of our board members, and everybody understands why he's a board member, because of what he said tonight. He knows what he's talking about, and that's what we need. And we need to talk, and we need to talk a little bit more. We need to be louder. We were pretty loud last year. People need to know, do you see me now? That's on our building, that sign. And underneath that sign is children, adults, men, women, moms, dads, and they're all sitting there. So can you see me now? And people need to know that we're there. We're not invisible, and we need help. And we can get that help here because, again, Fort Myers and Naples is pretty strong too in that philanthropic way, and that's what we need. We need people to stand up and help us do the things that we want to do. We're in the middle of quite a few things. Heidi and I, when we first started, it was just basically Heidi and I and a couple other people. Now we have like 12 people working. We saw 7,000 people last year. 7,000 people. I mean, that's pretty darn good, and we don't charge anything. So it's all, peer work that we do, and we work with people and help them get through their whatever situations, and we help them get through there. But I just think that they're primed to make us a big, big team and a big, big effort. And the homeless, I'll mention that one time here, we work with the homeless. And now what's going on with that is that we chased them all off of their surfaces that they were on. And something has to be done, I understand that. But we don't have enough room in the jails, even so if that's what they were going to do. I don't think they even have room for that. But now we have that homeless deal, and I'm asking people, well, what's the plan? What are we going to do? We don't have any beds. So those situations have to be solved. And homeless people still ask me today, Al, don't they just want to be homeless? I said, no, they don't want to be homeless. They don't want to be out there in that weather and all that heat and all that stuff. And some of them have 2, 3, 4 kids, and they're homeless for many reasons, whatever it is. But anyway, that's it for me for a minute.
I also want to reiterate the point that all law enforcement, we didn't get into this job just to put people in jail. Most of us got into it for the right reasons and to do the right thing and to help people along the way. Sometimes that gets lost and people just think we're the bad guys, just want to put people in jail, forget about them, and move on. But that's not the case. From a federal law enforcement perspective moving forward, I think It's too early to tell yet. And 3 months into a new administration with a new attorney general who sets the priorities for all of DOJ, it looks like, I think, that our major priorities are going to be full court press on targeting Mexican drug trafficking organizations or transnational organized crime. Most of it originates in Mexico. Full court press on attacking the supply side is what I think we'll be doing moving forward. It hasn't specifically been said, but the kind of indicators are in place that that's what we'll be doing. Whether that means more resources, I don't know. We'll see. But also I want to bring up the point when I speak, I'm kind of speaking from the perspective of targeting illicit controlled substances, cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, all the above, not from alcohol. Obviously, we don't investigate the alcohol offenses. So.
Thank you, guys. Is there anything after hearing each other speak that you wanted to kind of add on to or say? Final thoughts?
Not a whole lot of discourse up here. I thought we were going to be, he set us up so that we were going to be in full discourse and everyone agreeing or disagreeing with each other. But, and I think maybe 20 or 30 years ago, there might have been. But our roles have kind of come together much more. And I think there's a lot more understanding on both sides, from both the medical side and the law enforcement side, about what people really need. So when we stood to both sides of the room, right, really a lot of us are in the middle. And we need both to get people well. So, yeah, not a whole lot of disagreement up here. There was a lot of agreement. I was surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought when I started in law enforcement, I mean, the social aspect, right? So even just being part of the threat assessment team, and that's not just like dealing with guns and stuff like that. It's dealing with, okay, some type of threat. And okay, is it mental health related? Are there other issues that we can help, but we never thought about that, right? Now we, at universities, at schools, you have threat assessment teams that deal with, on the team as law enforcement, mental health professionals, just the educators, to figure out what can we do to help versus, hey, how can we punish? And I think that's the biggest thing. We got to figure out how to help versus punish.
That's great.
Yeah. I definitely think working together and combining our efforts on the issue is very important at this time.
Yeah. I just want to say, this was a great topic to raise awareness about, and we really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And thank you, both of you, and everybody that was involved in putting this together.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
I may open a can of worms here, but play devil's advocate for law enforcement. I remember you said something when you were over there talking about, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think sometimes people actually need to go to jail to get clean. It's just that little push where they're stuck in jail for 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get clean, to then get the help that they need if the people in the jail see that's something. So that might be opening a can of worms. But then also, I do a lot of work with human trafficking, and there's a big push now to have victims of human trafficking, which I call survivors, have their criminal histories sealed, voided, whatever, especially like their prostitution charges, expunged, thank you, I forgot the word. Why can't we do that in drug courts as well? And I think that's something that's not ever talked about. But if you have a habitual drug user who keeps going to jail, who's finally clean, what's not to have some kind of policy or push to have that clean from the record so they can at least get a regular job or something. Yeah. So that's just, I'm not trying to open a can of worms at the very end, but that's just something to think about as well.
You open up a can of worms because I'm
Sorry.
going to be in your house and you're going to help me write that policy.
Yes, a lot of times people can't even rent an apartment. They can't even get housing because of the record.
Right, and that was very important what you said. And when I said what I said over there, I kind of get why it gets confusing. I literally, when this attorney was defending my daughter, I thought she was going to go to jail. I was so happy, and it's the truth. I was happy, and she was going to jail because I couldn't get her any help anywhere else, or she didn't take any other help. So I wanted her in jail. I was going to plant something on her. Isn't that terrible for a dad to say that? But that's how desperate you get when you got 20 years of addiction in a person, and you want to save their life. I was thinking of all kinds of craziness, and the way that we handle people today in all the departments I worked with is so much difference. There's so much caring that goes into it. All our officials, all our sheriffs, and we work with the county with the sheriff, and we work with the Fort Myers sheriff also. But all of it's about they're caring, they're trying to help because they understand the problem. It's no more that you just look at somebody and oh, they're bad because they're using drugs. No, they're sick, and that's why they're using drugs, because they can't get off of it. So at any rate, I think this is such a great effort that you did here today, and I hope that we can do this every week. And maybe you'll come to our podcast, Bar for Recovery, me and Heidi, next week. Okay? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Here you go, sir.
Thank you.
No, thank you again for inviting me and everyone else. It's, I think, certainly productive. And 25 years ago when I got in law enforcement, this would never happen. The concept of having a mental health professional on call or alongside a police officer when he's working his shift, you know, if you suggested that 25 years ago, they would have looked at you like you had a third eye. Yeah. So and that started 15 years ago where I come from in South Carolina. So we've certainly progressed, not as quick as all of us wish, but hopefully the next, short term, 3 to 5 years, we can start working together more and creating policies that may, make a difference.
Yeah, thank you all so much for your contributions to the panel. We're going to ask for the audience to do the same activity that we did at the beginning and do it now sort of as a reflective piece, and you all are welcome to participate as well. But, yeah.
Although, I think what is more effective is to skip that part, because I think the consensus is pretty much, and that was my hope when I put this panel together, is that there might be some slight differences, but for the most part, that the two perspectives really intersect. And having been at FGCU since 2011, I can tell you a former chief of police was vehemently opposed to the Good Samaritan law, leading to students calling the county or the city rather than UPD when they needed help. So it's good to hear the sort of more compassionate side of this to come. So there were several other really good questions submitted. We tried to sort of get them included, but there's certainly a lot of really good questions left. So I would say enjoy, get some ice cream, ask your questions, talk to each other, and thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.